Thanks, everybody. I love all these photos that keep showing up here. Yeah. Really excited to be here, and thank you to the OCA. We work in a lot of different markets, and I can honestly say that this association is one of the most well-attended, best supported out there. So we're really excited to continue to support it ourselves via Headset, and very happy to be here. We're relatively new to the Oregon market. We're involved in markets like Washington, Colorado, Nevada, California, and Oregon as well. But I'm really excited to get to meet a number of you throughout the evening here. So much like Bo and New Frontier, I'm going to talk a little bit about data. And what's really exciting about kind of this trend in the space, people are leveraging data more and more to make more informed decisions. And that's really what we set out to do with Headset. Before Headset, I started a company, Leafly. I'm sure everyone's pretty familiar with Leafly. With that, we really set out to change perceptions around cannabis, kind of mainstream consumer perceptions of cannabis. I think we did a pretty good job there. We ended up selling it to Privateer Holdings and since moved on to tackle this problem of market intelligence, operational intelligence, and really help operators such as yourselves, drive more informed decisions around their business. So just a quick background on Headset in case you're not familiar and what we're doing, how we do it. We like to talk about ourselves as this data foundation of the cannabis industry. And when you look at a group like New Frontier, we think of them as very macro. I think both said kind of the Bloomberg of cannabis. We're a little more micro, a little more granular on the product, brand mix, kind of more of a Nielsen for the industry. But we provide a number of services. So we like to say we're this kind of data layer. It's all built on this retailer measurement data, so point of sale information, and we can use that to give operational intelligence back to the retailers, back to the dispensaries, so they can better understand what's going on with their own internal operations. We can aggregate that up, anonymize it, look at market trends, so what brands are leading, what products are selling really well. And then we also have a retailer direct data platform, so we can kind of create this nice connectivity between the retailers and their vendors, so the product manufacturers and distributors, and there's a lot of cool things you can do with that. And on top of that, we built some really cool intuitive dashboards, real-time analytics, time series trend analysis, and this data connectivity. So that's a little bit about what we do and where we come from. And so today I really wanted to talk a bit about Oregon, the kind of competition that we see, and what's going on. And so this is a somewhat high-level agenda. But just to start, cannabis, as we all know, is a multi-billion-dollar industry. So it's not really a big surprise that it's going to draw some competition. People want to get involved in this space. People are very excited about what's going on in this space, and it's just going to be, more and more licensee holders, more and more limited shelf space at retailers. So I want to look at kind of what is Oregon's current trajectory as far as trends and product mix, category mix, and I know Bo touched on some of that, so I'm going to talk a little more about that. Also, how does Oregon look in the context of other markets, particularly the Washington market? We're actually based in Seattle, kind of looking at the Washington state data, kind of where Oregon is on that curve, and granted, it's not apples to apples, and there are very nuanced differences between the market. It's kind of a nice way to kind of see where things are at, and hopefully kind of have somewhat of a crystal ball of where things may go. And then we're going to talk about just how you can be a little better prepared for what's ahead. We're 27 months into Oregon adult use recreational market, and when we looked at Washington, it opened July 8, 2014, so that's 42 months ago. So it's getting there. So 27 months into Washington rec sales was essentially October 2016. So this is a graph of Washington distinct brands that we track across the market, and you can see this nice steady growth happening here. And I think from where Oregon enters, as far as the similar time scales to the end of the year, December 2017, it's a 30% growth in brands. So you can just expect this to keep accelerating. And when we talk about brands at Headset, it's not necessarily just license holders. It's also existing license holders that are introducing new brands, new consumer brands. So from a consumer perspective, one license holder may produce a variety of brands, from the value price to kind of standard to premium price brands. So we track all those independently. So what's going on right now, what we see in Oregon is sales growth is all positive. Everything's trending up from the category growth, but some are really standing out over others. A lot of it has to do with kind of size of market share. Things like this is beverage on the left side, in case you can't read it in the back. We see 200% growth of beverage from December 2016 to December 2017 in Oregon. Now, beverage is a smaller segment, a smaller category segment, so any kind of fluctuation you might see, large spikes like that. Edibles and pre-rolls as well. But, concentrates, flour, vape pens, everything's up. So sales are up. Sales are trending in the right direction, which is, a positive thing. So, category growth, and what does that mean for you? If you're a retailer, one thing that we like to help retailers understand is their stock-to-sales ratio of these category products. So, if beverages is starting to increase in sales, are you sure you have enough stock of beverages to meet that demand? One of the biggest items that we see when we help retailers with their operational data is stock-out events are very costly. It's probably the #1 cost that occurs where loss of revenue is happening. So really making sure you're in line, or if things aren't trending at the rate that maybe you think, maybe you shouldn't be purchasing as much of that category. So just being mindful of that category mix and that growth rate is critical as a retailer. And then product manufacturers, relatively obvious, but take advantage of those high growth markets. Maybe there's an opportunity there. Maybe you're in a saturated market. Maybe it's something like flower sales or what have you. For the moment, you can take advantage of things that are trending up. So maybe it's time to look at something like extracts or beverages in that last example. But while sales are up, category share of segment sales is cooling as well in certain segments. So what we did notice was concentrates and vapor pens saw a constant decrease in overall share of the pie. So while sales are up, if you can think of 100% of sales are going to a variety of different product types from beverages, concentrates, edibles, flour, pre-roll, vapor pens, and others. Certain ones are shrinking a little bit. So concentrates shrinking a little bit, and vapor pens shrinking a little bit. Our flour numbers that we see, about 60% in the market, which I'm really happy to see, kind of mirrors exactly what Bo is saying about their share of market for flour sales. So, if you're in one of these segments, just be cognizant of what's going on and understand that product allocation. And it's really not unprecedented. Again, to kind of benchmark against something like the Washington data set, we saw very similar gaps or differences in category sales, where vapor pens in Washington went down about 16%, concentrates down about 25% for share of sales. So to kind of talk a bit about the competitive landscape, so this is looking at license data from the end of or the beginning of, I should say 2017 to the beginning of 2018 here, the number of licenses. So there are a lot more. The license counts continue to grow. I can't read the numbers, 482 to now 1,035 of producers, processors, so pretty sizable growth there. So over 100% growth in product processor licensee holders, 60% growth in retailers. So you can kind of see this imbalance as well. So a lot of production, a little less retail. Maybe that's a good thing based on what Bo is saying with some of the competition and market saturation. But it just also means that things are going to get more competitive at the retail level for these product manufacturers. And brands are emerging. This is happening. There's becoming consumer awareness of brands. This is just a sample of brands, popular brands that we're tracking. By no means a comprehensive list, but people are starting to get this kind of brand awareness, starting to go to retailers expecting to see these brands. And this is just going to keep happening as everyone's trying to get more market share. Brands are also producing more products. So this is looking at products per vendor across the different brands here. And you can see pretty steady growth back in November of 2016, about 11 average products per vendor, all the way to the end of the year, about 23 products per vendor on average. So more brands are producing more products, but at the same time, vendors per store are declining. So the average number of vendors is reducing, and it really does show that they're becoming more picky about their vendor choices. This could be a byproduct of consolidation. But what's important to note is just this 20% decline in vendors per store. So if you're a product manufacturer, you need to make sure you get that shelf space and maintain that shelf space, because it's only getting more competitive as retailers carry less and less product. So that kind of leads me to, what can you do? What do you need to be thinking about? What kind of levers can you pull to kind of help with this? So as a retailer, really dig into your operational data. Look at your sales trends, whether positive or negative, to identify, should you be carrying more beverages or concentrates or edibles, what have you. Look at your inventory, kind of optimize there as well. With the kind of numbers that Bo is just showing, every dollar counts. So really streamlining that, making sure that your stock to sales ratios are in line. And measure your sales associates. Budtenders still drive so much of the transaction. For a new consumer that goes in, even myself who's been consuming cannabis in the adult use market since they've been around, and medical before that, I still go in and talk to the budtender and ask, what's new, what should I try? So really measure what they're selling and make sure that what they're selling is in line with your product mix and what you want them to be selling, not just their favorite flavor of the month at that time. And another really important thing to think about is leveraging relationships with your product manufacturers, your vendors. Collaborate on things like inventory management. As that shelf space gets more harder to maintain, by collaborating with your product manufacturers, offloading some of that as a retailer, giving them a sense of their product's inventory on your shelf space, they can then do things like vendor manage inventory and take that off your plate, which will save you a lot of time and hopefully streamline more and more of your business. And then same thing with product manufacturers. So if you're a vendor, start collaborating with your retailers. Really look at things like vendor managed inventory. That's a very valuable service that you can provide to the retailers. Making sure they're always well stocked. That Goldilocks amount, right? Never too much, never too little, always just right. Both parties are really aligned in that. A vendor, as a product manufacturer, you don't want to oversell to your retailer where they have excess inventory, they're unhappy, they're out of cash. They're sitting on your products. Maybe it's getting stale. It's not, selling as well as you were told. Or, on the flip side, having too little inventory. You have upset customers coming in looking for specific products that you might not have at that time. So really, collaborating with your retailers, looking at things like vendor managed inventory, it can be critical. It can also lead to, more informed sales calls. So you're not wasting anybody's time calling in, seeing if they need resupply. By getting visibility into those numbers in real time, you can have those informed sales calls. You know exactly what they need when you do call into those shops. And it really does, help you become indispensable. So looking at just that vendor share at a retailer, you don't want to get swapped out with another brand. It's really important to stay on that shelf space. So by collaborating and creating that relationship with the retailer, just really ensures that you're going to stick around for the long term. And then, watching market trends is critical as well. Watch out for new product introductions. Every new product that comes in the market is just more competitive pressure. So staying on top of that, staying on top of market data trends to really find opportunity in the segments, opportunity in price point, price elasticity, consumer purchase habits. So really kind of taking advantage of that market data to make those strategic decisions about the type of product you're producing. It's really not enough to just kind of guess and just make a new type of product and put it on the shelf. So, the future is bright. It's as Bo was saying, it's getting competitive, it's getting difficult. But I think by setting up for the long term and kind of establishing some of these best practices, habits that exist in other verticals with retail, can really get you prepared for the long haul. Bo said it really great. It's about brand. It's about your supply chain management, and those are two things that really will help you in the long term. And so starting to think about those things now while the market is very competitive, if you can kind of bake that into your organization today, you're going to be here for the long term. You're going to be one of those brands, one of those retailers that really survives long term. So that's it. Thank you very much. Happy to answer any questions anybody might have. All right. Oh, we got one, two. Go ahead in the back.
What's the pool for your day set?
Right now, it's getting there. We're about 10% of Oregon retailers. It's continuing to increase, so the more retailers we work with, the better the data gets. But that's kind of where we're at. We kind of consider it the baseline at the moment, but we're pretty early in the Oregon market. Yes?
What do you think the disruptive trends are for the cannabis industry?
Disruptive trends?
Yeah.
Good question. You know, I think internal operations is disruptive as from a brand or a retailer perspective. So, you know, making sure that you're really looking at this stuff, looking at data to drive your decisions is very disruptive. You know, the marketing channels, type of products you're producing could be considered disruptive. We really look at, you know, the operational data and operational intelligence, so that's kind of our wheelhouse. So I think that if you leverage that type of thing, it can really get you in a good competitive position.
Thank you.
Cool, thanks everybody.
Okay, thanks everybody for coming. Remember the women's event on March 1st, Tome Talks on the 16th. We're working on our DC trip for this year. If you're interested, go have another drink. We've got the room for a